He'll be presenting on the topic Maps of Supply Chain Planning, Maths, Art, Philosophy and Science of Supply Chain Planning. With over 13 years of supply chain experience in reputed large pharmaceutical organization, he has a wide knowledge in area of supply chain, demand planning and fulfillment, supply planning, market planning, distribution and warehousing, channel management and credit control. Over to you.
Thank you. It's really good to be presenting after the tea break as such, because everybody's in fresh minds. A lot has been already said on the topic of planning by the earlier panelists. And this presentation is much more about the reflection, how do we treat planning in an enterprise, and what value it can bring to the table. We have discussed that forecasting is a challenge. We have discussed that inventory management is quite a dicey business. Whether do you keep inventories, what are the risks associated with it. What I will try to do is not dig too much deeper because you have already spent those thoughts already. So I will just quickly run through what is being done by different things and what differentiation a planning team can create, what value it can bring to the table in that thing. So the context is, what is the business genesis of supply chain planning? Somebody told that forecasting is a challenge. So why don't we take the forecast directly from the markets, and why do we have these planning teams? Why do we have demand planning? Why do we have supply planning? And this type of teams working within a supply chain. If forecasting is a challenge and if inventory management requires lot of risk management being done. So what is the business genesis we will cover through? We'll also touch on topics are what are the best structures in supply chain planning? What is the claim to fame of planning groups? What is the reason for existence of these planning groups? And how we can create differentiation in planning for an enterprise to gain. And finally, we'll be epitomizing the planning. Now, these are the jargons we keep hearing in all the forums. That we need a supply chain which is a demand-driven supply chain. We need a supply chain which gives us a competitive advantage over our competitors. We need supply chains which are more into integrated business planning, right from the portfolio analysis, which countries to be entered, which markets to be entered. This all thoughts are 50,000 feet tall thoughts. But there are teams which work in a supply chain on a day-to-day basis, on a rolling basis, to see that supply chain delivers value to the enterprise. Now, we all are supply chain experts and there are a lot of definitions of supply chain. But I met one of the junior sales representative. He had a very unique definition of supply chain. And what was his definition? His definition was, गाड़ी आई, माल उतर गया. गाड़ी आई, माल चढ़ गया. Anything which goes between those two processes is supply chain. If you just sit back and try to connect your thoughts, anything which happens between the material getting unloaded from a truck to a manufacturing supply chain, and then finally getting packed and getting delivered to the end customer, everything gets encouraged or encompassed into this. And then he further hampered my ego by saying that इसमें planning क्या करता है? गाड़ी आई माल उतर गया, गाड़ी आई माल चला गया. What does planning does? So what I told him that I decide, or rather the planning decides what material will come, when will it come, what material will go, which place it will go, and how it will go. So this is what supply chains delivers to us, to the enterprise. Now if we talk typical manufacturing supply chain, this will be much more relevant to the FMCG or pharma supply chains. You have a planning, obviously I put a question mark there because this is a reflection thought, what should be the planning role? We have procurements, we have already discussed by different panelists. They have to bring on time in full quantities, they have to bring best quality material, they have to bring at the best optimum cost. There is the warehousing and logistics teams. The basic logic is to keep the stock accurate, to basically ship on time, to meet their SLAs. There's a channel management team. The basic SLA is to service those customers, timely execution of those orders. But what does planning do here? Now, first of all, what planning definition is? If you have, how many of you are from planning groups? Or have you ever worked in planning group in a supply chain? We have few hands going up. So how many of you are on the receiving side of the planning, that you work with planning, that you are into procurement, logistics, you are the customers of planning. So if we see a supply chain, the planning team is the upstream function which will go and bring in the demand which needs to be manufactured. And the other parts of supply chain, logistics, procurement, customer service, will then try to gather resources to meet that kind of demand. So that is the role of a planning team. They bring something, and whatever they bring should be very, very of good quality, so that your supply chain resources which gets invested into this gets transformed into something of high value. So this is the function of planning teams. What do we have? A bifurcation in a typical setup. We have demand planning. These teams work with markets and market research, and they basically are responsible or accountable for something called distribution requirements planning. They are the people who basically give a available to promise thought. These people have to keep safety norms for something like seasonal variations to happen, for some kind of stock urgencies requirement. Supply planning has to match the demand. They have to be basically, they are responsible for an MRP, they are responsible for rough-cut capacity plannings, production scheduling. New products are a different ball game in typical pharmaceutical industries, because here, right from the start or the concept, you have to interact with each and every team, whether it's regulatory, whether it's quality, whether it's packaging, whether it's procurement, till the final launch. So new product planning, where in a pharmaceutical world, if you have to grow, you have to keep launching new products. So it is much, much more granular level of planning which is required into new products. So these are the planning structures you will find in a very matured supply chain. Now the issue, or rather the next level is, how do we balance this demands and supplies? I don't think you will be able to see this internal part, sorry. So there are various variables you have, and these variables work around three parts. That the logic is, you have to tap every opportunity which comes from the markets, and you have to tap every opportunity. It means that your supply chains have to be very, very responsive. So you have to deal with a variety of goods. If you are into a business which makes lot of different SKUs, you have to deal with variety of goods. You have to deal with lot of velocity, okay? And you have to address the variability which will come. Challenge for supply chain leaders today is, how do you basically resolve the disputes between demand and supply? Because by role design itself, demand and supply are trying to optimize their local optima. Supply planning will always like to have less number of changeovers. They will always like to have more CCPC. They will like to do high volume products. Whereas demand will always like to be more responsive. They will like to address more of deltas which come through their way. So the basic thought is, the supply chain leaders, if we try to have a hierarchy around where they can make decision making at a little granular level. What happens is, if you have an independent demand heads, independent supply heads, the problem reaches to the topmost. So you should have planning heads down the line, which can take quick decisions, build a relationship of trust. That is where you will be able to make or break any kind of opportunity which comes along. Now, what is the claim to fame of planning teams? There was a question mark there on the earlier slide. And if we all work in planning, we try to fix up our KRAs around these points. Forecast accuracies. Forecast accuracy is a challenge for any kind of industry. Now, if it's a challenge, and we talk about collaborative planning approach, consensus planning approach, which means that we will go to the markets or the market research team, we'll talk to them, and then we will arrive at a figure. So whenever forecasting succeeds in an enterprise, the credit cannot be claimed by planners alone. So life of a planner, there is a difficulty. You can't claim for forecasting success, because you do not have a guarantee that the next time you are going to be successful. So this claim to fame can't be done directly by a planner. Second is availability. Now there are many people who are responsible for making a supply chain succeed. You can't claim as a planner that you are the guy who has made the stocks available. The procurement guy has brought the material on time, the production people have manufactured on time, the logistics guy has shipped on time, and the customer service guy has billed on time. That's the reason why the stocks have been made available. Optimum-led inventories. We all know that as planners, what we try to do is, somebody talked about managing inventory of quality. There's a general tendency that we try to look at the header figure and see, मेरे इतने करोड़ की inventory होनी चाहिए, या मेरे इतने दिनों की inventory होनी चाहिए. The problem is, we tend to do not have quality of inventory working on our favor. We tend to move around with A-class SKUs, we try to manage them, we try to balance those and try to achieve an overall level. Even that requires a lot of collaboration with finance and marketing. Inventories are not highly owned by planning teams because they even talk, whenever they are blamed for inventories, they talk about the market forecasting errors. They talk about production inability to deliver. That's the reason they are building up the norms. So even this is a disputed area. And freight rationalizations. We all know that if our stocks are available in plenty and on time and from the beginning of the month, we can do a lot of freight savings. If we have inventories, we will have a lot of freight savings. But there are also components like how do you basically make a container load, how do you basically do transporter negotiations, how do you basically populate your hubs. So that all things are there. So even this benefit is being claimed jointly by the logistics team. So what do we do now? Every aspect what we planning guys do gets jointly collaborated with other teams. So we are a strategic function which can succeed only when other people succeed. How do we create differentiation? How do we create differentiation in planning? One is communication and collaboration. What is collaboration? How it is different from communication? Communication is just passing on the information. Collaboration is when you engage the stakeholder to take a decision on that. In this world of 24/7 connectivity, emails, everything, most of us planners, what we do is that we pass on the information. So we need to have something called pre-S&OP or S&OP. Now even S&OP at a strategic level needs to be further downsized to the divisional level also. Because in a bigger forum we only talk about high level things. To have more of collaboration, these are the review forums where a planner needs to point out what's going wrong in terms of forecasts, inventories, availabilities, and how that can be corrected. Technology as an enabler, we have all, there has been a lot of discussion on technology, but I would like to give example where we have got some success as far as technology is concerned. We have this something called rolling sales plan. So we have got for India markets, there are so many regions we have, and every regional manager has to enter what he wants in a system called web-based system. Now, as per the normal process, the people will keep entering, and that further has to get consolidated at a divisional level. Now, if it has to get consolidated at a divisional level, we have to wait for everybody to enter on time. Then only our distribution plan, procurement plans will get finalized. Now, what we did was, we made a simple, with the help of our own IT, we made a simple auto email reminders. So, through that, what happened was everybody was encouraged to fill in on time. Before they came to the office, the auto emails were coming that you need to complete this RSPs on time. Further, how do we motivate them? So what we did was, we automated something called congratulatory emails. Congrats, you are the top division, you are in the top 5 divisions for the month, you have done your RSP entries timely. With the help of you, we have been able to finalize our plans on time. And then the impact was so good. So all the marketing heads were very happy. They were sending their own comments on the mails saying that you should be the first next time. So everybody was striving for that excellence. So there are small technology things which we can basically adopt within our enterprises to get more efficient on this. Another example is something called, we all know that we live in a world where we are very, very dynamic. So there are many changes happening. And in a typical industry like pharma or an FMCG, we have this spike style changes happening, products getting discontinued. So there's a cost related to each decision which is being made. So what we did was within our ERP, within our SAP, we made something called login of inventory management for change. So you can log in there, you can find out the demand planners will enter any kind of change proposed by markets, and the supply planners will enter any change which is proposed by manufacturing, R&D, or a technology or a different entity. So any change which is logged in, auto mails will get to the stakeholders that this change is being proposed. The supply planners will then write what is the cost of this change. How much input material component will get compromised or written off from the system if we make this change now. And what if scenario, what if we do it after 3 months, this is the cost of change. We were able to salvage lot of write-offs and we were able to do a better decisions on this. Planning teams need to also engage in standardization. This topic was also debated today. Only demand planners and supply planners have that visibility in the entire chain. What can be standardized? Everybody wants a customizable kind of thing, but there are opportunities Example, shipper size rationalizations. Example, artwork harmonization for packing materials if you are dealing into multiple countries. Supply chain stress will only come down when you basically implement it. Oh, so I miss out on supply measuring stress index. Now, what is stress index? Somebody talked about manufacturing index. What is stress index? As planning people, we bring in the requirements and that becomes an input for other teams to follow. So if our procurement people are bringing in material for which they are not getting lead times, everything is a rush PR, rush purchase requisition. If everything being shipped is by air, or if the proportion of shipping being done by air is more, then you are into a stress index. You are causing a supply chain stress into the system. Portfolio rationalizations. It has been already discussed that supply planning people should, or demand planning people should, constantly engage in trying to find out which are my tailing SKUs. The SKUs which are on the bottom 2-3% contributing list of my divisions. How I can try to basically stop the manufacturing of those SKUs, reduce those complexities. Is planning only a max? We all told that we planners are basically seen doing work on spreadsheets, and since what we bring has to be very, very scientifically proven that I have brought the right type of demands. So is only a max? This is what the great man told. It is far from reality. It's not only a max. There has to be a logic, there has to be a proper derivation, because you are deriving manufacturing plants, you are deriving something called distribution plants, so it has to be logical enough for everybody to support it. But the important part of a planning guy is basically what he makes. He has to make others see in the same way. He has to make the importance of the requirement he has placed by others also. He has to follow up with them. He has to sell his concepts to them. There is a philosophy. Whatever I have talked is philosophy. Philosophy is a norm, your belief. So there are not only scientific calls which a planner takes. There are a lot of gut calls which a planner takes. And whosoever has worked in planning or has headed planning divisions will know there are a lot of gut calls being taken. What should be my stock norms? What kind of buffer should I keep? All these things are basically done through a feeling, through a gut feeling. And we have talked about technology and the importance of technology. The science for today is the technology for tomorrow. And that's it from my side. If there are any questions, we can take it offline. And thanks for listening.